The first reading on this Feast of the Holy Family, we're hearing from the first chapter of the first book of Samuel. But it doesn't make a lot of sense. Hannah asked God to give her a child. God gave her a child. And then, as soon as she weaned him, which means he's still an infant, she gives him away. Gives him to Eli, the high priest in the temple, forever, the writer tells us. She asked God for a child. God gave her a child, and then she gave the child away. Was she regretting that she asked for one? Was Samuel keeping her up at night because he was too fussy? Or was it a lot more work than she envisioned and anticipated? Does she regret this decision? She's just keeping a promise. We have to start at the beginning of the chapter, the beginning of the first book of Samuel, to understand why. Hannah's the wife of Elkanah. She's not Elkanah's only wife. Judaism at that time, you could have more than one. And Elkanah had two. And whereas Hannah had no children, his other wife, Peninnah, had given both sons and daughters to Elkanah. And Peninnah liked to rub that fact in Hannah's face every chance she got. Hannah felt rejected by her family, rejected by her husband, and cursed by God. And her answer to that was not despair, but to go into the temple every day for hours at a time, to say the same prayer over and over and over again. God, make me a mom. Give me a child. So fervent was her praying in that temple that Eli, the high priest, thought she was drunk and tried to throw her out of there. But she refused to leave. She wasn't going to go until God answered her prayer. She kept on saying the same thing over and over and over again. But then, the last day, she added something else to her prayer. If you give a child to me, I will give that child right back to you. She simply wanted to prove, perhaps to Peninnah and to Elkanah and to herself, she can be a mom. She can do this. And God answered her prayer, and she does exactly as she promised she would. Does that mean that she doesn't love her son? No, it just means that she loves God more. And she realizes that that child was God's gift to her. And as God had kept every promise he made to her, she was certainly going to keep the one promise she made to him. And God will take care of Hannah. She's going to have many more kids. Peninnah, in the end, will be the one that will be jealous. And as for Samuel, he is going to be sent on a task by God to go find and anoint the first and great kings of Israel, Saul and David. Hannah trusted in the Lord when everything seemed lost, and God answered her prayer, and she kept her promise to God. What an example of fidelity for us. When we turn our attention to the gospel, we get the only story about Jesus between 40 days old and 30 years old. It's a big gap. When he was 40 days old, Mary and Joseph brought him into the temple at Jerusalem for the first time. The prophet Simeon holds him in his hands and says, I can die a happy man. I'm holding my Savior. And then we see nothing until he's 12, only this event, and then silence for 18 years. The Gospels focus mainly on the last 1,000 days of Jesus' life. Everything else, use your imagination. It's anybody's guess what was going on in Nazareth, in the carpenter's workshop, in the house attached to it. Save for this story of what happened when they took Jesus up to Jerusalem for the Passover. Now, Mary and Joseph had already had to travel 90 miles from Nazareth to Bethlehem for Jesus to be born under the light of a star in the barn. And now at the age of 12, they have another 90-mile journey, but in a different direction. To get to Jerusalem for the Passover, the Jewish law said you had to come to Jerusalem for 3 different feast days during the year, all of which lasted for a week. That was Passover, there was Pentecost 50 days later, and then in the fall there was the Feast of Tabernacles. You would do well to live near Jerusalem if you were Jewish, because the law said you had to come, and the further away you lived, the harder it was to get there. For Mary and Joseph and the people of Nazareth, it was going to take a week on foot for them to get to Jerusalem from Nazareth. And they'd have to find a place to stay. And after all of that is done, now they're on their way home, and everybody traveled in caravans. There was security in numbers. There were thieves waiting along the side of the road to rob those people who had nothing of even the little they had. And so with all these people on the road, Mary and Joseph assumed Jesus is in the mix somewhere. All the kids were off playing behind everyone else. And yet a day goes by, Joseph says to Mary, "Where's Jesus? I thought you had him." Imagine how they're going to explain that to God. He gave them one task, and now they don't know where he is. They are quite concerned, obviously. And remember, they're a whole day's journey back towards Nazareth. They have to leave everyone else, turn around, taking a great risk, traveling only by themselves. And then it takes them another day once they get back to Jerusalem to figure out where their son actually is. By this time, they are frantic. But Jesus, who is the child that was left behind, he doesn't seem to have a problem with it. Mary says, "Why did you do this to us? Don't you know how anxious we were and looking for you?" Jesus doesn't answer her question. It's probably better not to ask God questions. Instead, he puts two questions to her. "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know I must be in my Father's house?" Jesus has put them on notice. Joseph is his parent. God is his dad. Even from childhood, he understood who he is and what's going to become of him. He knows he is God. He knows that he's going to be murdered. He's going to go anyway. So great is his desire to fulfill his Father's will, he will humor Mary and Joseph by going back to Nazareth with them and being obedient to them. But therein lies the greatest tension for Mary and Joseph. How can you parent God? Jesus, take a bath. Telling God what to do. Jesus, you stink. I said take a bath. No one wants to be in that position to tell God what God can or can't do. But Mary and Joseph, they were told by God the Father that they had to do this for God the Son. And that's where the greatest tension lie, because they tried to do right by both at the same time. And that probably and could not have been very easy. And that's why we feel a pull for the Holy Family to be an example for us in how we live out our family life. It surely shows that God chose his Son to be like us in all things but sin. He could have sent Jesus like Thor, coming down with a hammer on a lightning bolt, a conquering hero. But instead, he decided he would be born of a womb like us, of a woman like us, and raised in a family just like us. Couldn't have been perfect, couldn't have been easy, but it's all they had, and it's all they needed. We live at a time when the family in our country and in our culture is fractured, perhaps now more than ever. We have people living in bigger and bigger spaces, so much so where there can be the man cave and the she shed and the tree house. Maybe everybody's under one roof, but are they together? That is the question. There's so many pressures and tensions pulling us apart, people having struggles in their marriages, spouses with each other, parents and their children, children with their parents, the siblings, the in-laws, all the people you had to see at the holidays that you wish couldn't have made it. So much tension in our immediate family and in our extended family. We need the Prince of Peace sitting in that little manger to show us again how to come together and to stay together even when it is not easy to be so. And Jesus shows us the way because he keeps this family together. This parish, the church on planet Earth, throughout the world, the community of saints, the church of the living and the dead and the risen. He holds everything together in himself, the scriptures tell us. We would do well to learn from Mary and Joseph how to honor God our Father by how we love and honor and serve each other in our family. That, of course, requires mercy and forgiveness. Mercy means someone may deserve to be punished. I'm going to let them off the hook. Forgiveness, we learn from him because he chooses to freely and frequently forget and forgive everything we do, every time we do it, even though he knows we're going to do it 2,000 more times. He wants us to do the same for each other. He'll never say no when we say we are sorry. And the people that we hurt the most are not our foes. The people that we are hurt by the most are not our enemies. It's the people that we live with because we spend most of our time with them. And so then, where selfishness and stubbornness and bitterness have taken root, the Prince of Peace has come to once again drive out the darkness just as he came to destroy death and to help us to come together and to stay together. The simple advice that Jesus, Mary, and Joseph would give us for our families. If we want to be a saint, become a saint maker, try to get the people you live with into heaven, and you'll be right behind them.